Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Western Spirit here from Israel. And today with us, we have someone very special, Jonathan Conricus, the former international spokesperson for the IDF and a senior fellow at FDD,
The Foundation for Defense of Democracies.
Defense of Democracies. And today we're going to speak about defending democracies and Israel and all that. So, Jonathan, it's a pleasure to speak with you.
Shalom. Pleasure to be here.
So, Jonathan, we managed going through all the sirens. We got here. We're at the studio. If there'll be a siren, we'll show the audience how it is. But in the meantime, the war with Iran is going, I think, on the third week already, almost to a month.
Yep.
Where are things now? And who's winning?
Well, I think we are winning. We are making very good progress. I think in every military realm, when you kind of boil it down to physics and truth, I think that the Iranians their capabilities are degraded day by day. We're taking assets away, but there's still a lot of uncharted territory in the sense of many, many targets that the US and Israel, for economic and humanitarian purposes, have decided not to strike yet. Mm-hmm. And the emphasis being on yet. When we see the Iranians escalating, when we see them targeting almost exclusively civilian infrastructure, when we hear them say, we are going to target your electric and energy infrastructure, then that, of course, and the only thing separating is the fact that we have excellent air defenses and they're capable of intercepting most of the incoming ballistic missiles. But the intention is there by the Iranians. And if they succeed, I think we'll see an Israeli and perhaps also American retaliation, and that could really escalate the situation, and that could bring things, open the realm up of more targets. Up until now, Israeli and American targeting has been almost exclusively military, 100% military. A few sites have been struck that are also dual purpose, storage depots of fuel, for instance, in Tehran and other locations. But in essence, this could expand way further. Militarily speaking, I think, it is a contest. Any war is a contest, but I think that what Israel and the US have done is to show how superior they are militarily speaking. Military, however, is only part of what we need to do. At the end of the day, wars are, yes, they're won on the battlefield, but the real long-term achievements are forged in boardrooms and discussion meetings, and they're signed on paper at the end, and we're not there yet. But I think good progress on the way.
So I want to ask you about what exactly do we think is the Iranian strategy here? Because they're obviously much weaker than both Israel and America, and if Israel and America are together, they're way weaker. So their strategy, as I understand it, is twofold, maybe three. The first is to shoot at all their neighbors in the hope that they will pressure America to stop. I guess that's the only way I can understand it. The second is to close the oil shipping in Hormuz and try to economically pressure, especially the U.S. Mm-hmm. The Americans are very touchy-feely about their gas prices. And the third is the propaganda war. Yeah. Is the sort of shooting out missiles of, so to speak, of fake news. So let's talk about all three of those and see if it's working, I guess.
Yeah.
So we start, first of all, with their neighbors? Why would Iran shoot at Qatar? They're good friends until 5 minutes ago. Why are they shooting? Why do you think? What are they thinking?
Yeah. So I think we have to understand the mentality of the Iranian regime and first understand its objective before we try to understand their strategy. Their objective is to survive. Their objective is to keep the so-called revolution going, to stay in power, to continue to oppress 93 million Iranians, many different ethnic groups, but all of them are defined as Iranians. And their real objective is to stay around and to be able to continue to do what they're doing. They believe that they are acting, fulfilling a divine decree, and they believe that it is their duty to spread the Islamic revolution, to conquer more land, to expand by force the revolution, and to subjugate anybody who doesn't conform with their way of life. That's the overall objective. Strategically speaking, I have lots of respect for every enemy that we have, and Baruch Hashem, we have many. But I think the Iranians have shown over many years a lot of clever, long-term, patient, strategic planning and thinking. Yeah. I think we've seen the Iranians build a very impressive network around Israel, really build this ring of fire around Israel with Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, former proxies in Syria, Houthis in Yemen, and organizations in Iraq, all of that with the purpose which was supposed to support the strategy of the objective of annihilating the Zionist entity. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of people think that it's, Israel lashing out and why is Israel being the aggressor? We need to understand that first and foremost, the Islamic Republic of Iran is the aggressor. They are the ones who have defined a clear official national objective to destroy what they call the Zionist entity. It isn't just talk. It is an action item on meetings, and it is really an objective that the former supreme leader defined very clearly, and the entire establishment has been pursuing. Now, when we speak about the war, the different strategies and what the Iranians are doing, I said before that I respect them for their strategic decision-making. During the war, not so much. I think what we see is panic. Mm-hmm. We see decisions that are being made without perhaps thinking through how this will play out. And, many times organizations and people make decisions based on past assumptions and realities. And I think the Iranians have fallen for that same mistake. They're making decisions as if we are on October 6th, yes, as if they're in the same commanding position. And the mentality of the Iranian regime is one of a bully. It's a regional bully. It's a bully that has become accustomed to being the bully without anybody putting them in their place or attaching a price tag to their acts of bullying. And it's bullying against the region, other Arab and Muslim states. It's bullying against Israel. It is taunting the Americans and humiliating the Americans for many years and acting as a bully. So when they made the decision, I think the fatal decision to fire hundreds, actually more than that, thousands of ballistic missiles at Muslim Arab countries, yes, killing civilians in Qatar, in Saudi, in the UAE, in Bahrain, and many other locations. When they made that decision, that was based on the bully mentality that they can do it and get away with it, and that the other countries... What was
the point of it?
The point of, I think you said it correctly.
To get them to pressure America
to get them to pressure America out of what the Iranians perceived was an Arab weakness and a lack of willingness to fight and defend themselves and, just care for their economic interest. And I think it's backfiring already, and I think it will backfire pretty severely against the Iranian regime. And I think however this war ends, the day after will be a different reality. And I think more and more people in the world, in the region and outside of the region, understand by Iran's actions what an absolute threat Iran is to regional stability and global stability. By their actions, they're proving everything that Israel has been saying for so long, that they are a regime controlled by crazy, fanatic people, that they have zero regard for international law, international norms, for dignity, for human life, and that they are reckless with the military power that they have. All of this is being proven in real time by the decisions made by the Iranian regime.
Is that also one of the interesting things is that they've been shooting a little bit here and there at European targets.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that maybe they realized shooting at the Arab targets wasn't working to pressure America, but the Europeans are so weak and so scared of anything to do with anything militarily that shooting one or two missiles at Cyprus, at British targets, would get the UK to pressure America. So they couldn't pressure the Arabs. They decided to use the British to pressure the Americans. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be a wrong assessment, because I think the Europeans are susceptible to pressure. They are weak, they're feeble, they are leaderless, they lack the moral strength and conviction that we read in history books, and we learned about how the Brits fought and how others fought during the Second World War. That ability to defend, to stand for something and defend what you believe in, that appears to have been lost in the European continent, and we see really the another step down in the sinking of Europe, in the self-inflicted demise of Europe. And I think we've seen British leadership, Prime Minister Starmer what a class act in really self-defeating national politics.
Yeah.
Sad to see. I'm a fan of Britain in general, of the UK, of English history, of English culture, and it's really sad to see how what Europe has become. So that, I mean, it was, you know, it's a fair gamble by the Iranians that the Europeans would cower under pressure. So far, I think it's interesting to see that the Arabs didn't cower, and therefore the Europeans, even the Europeans, decided, well, we can't really cower because the Arabs have had it so much worse, we can't be weaker than them. Bottom line here, though, is that Iran tried the tactic or the strategy of lashing out, firing thousands of missiles all across the region. But I think what's interesting is, you know, again, the discrepancies here with what Iran said over many years and what they have now done. The Iranian regime, Foreign Minister Arakji and other senior officials have said on record, we do not possess ballistic missiles with a range that exceeds 2,000 kilometers. And what that does, it puts southeastern Europe, southern parts of Italy, some areas of the Balkans, Bulgaria, and a few other areas within range of Iranian missiles. So most of Western Europe is safe. Now they fired 2 ballistic missiles towards the Pacific island of Diego Garcia, where the U.S. is flying bombers from. That's 4,000 kilometers away. Now, the missile that they fire is a dual-stage missile, which means that it has one set of propulsion for the first stage and then another set of propulsion for the second stage, and that creates a very long range. It's not yet an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of reaching continental U.S., but 4,000 kilometers brings you just to the southern outskirts of London, and it puts Berlin, Rome, Paris, and many other European countries well within range. Now, all of these countries are totally exposed. And the Iranian regime has been saying officially, we don't have missiles to fire at that range. Now, when the noose is around the neck, they indeed show that they have these capabilities. Now, then you should ask yourself, or Europeans and Americans should ask themselves, well, if they've been lying about this, what else have they been lying about? We know that they've been conducting a clandestine nuclear weapons program. They say that they're not doing it, but all of the evidence shows exactly the opposite in terms of enrichment, in terms of metal research, in terms of weaponization, warheads, ballistic missiles. All of that is there. The intel is there. Israel and the U.S. has exposed it. The Iranians stick to their guns and they stick to their lies. And I think anybody with sense in their head should look at the Iranian regime, look at their communications, and treat everything with extreme caution, knowing that this is a regime that masters in lies, deceit, terror, deception, and that there's nothing that tethers them to reality or truth.
Now I want to get to the economic short. So President Trump, we're recording this on Sunday, the 22nd. He put out last night, late night Israel time, a truth on his Truth Social media, in which he said that if Iran doesn't open in the next 48 hours the Straits of Hormuz to oil, fully open it, he will attack and obliterate pretty much basically their largest, their energy sector, but starting with their largest energy, I guess, power plant or something like that.
Electric facility.
So first of all, I didn't even know they have electricity anymore, because we've been hearing for months that their water and electricity isn't really that working anyway.
It's been intermittent.
Yes. So that would like basically destroy no one will have any electricity in Iran at that point, pretty much. If he continues one after the other. But do they really have the power to shut the straits? I thought their whole navy has been destroyed. Where are we on that?
So let's unpack that. First, in terms of President Trump's threat, I think at this stage, anybody would be very unwise not to take President Trump at his word and not to listen very carefully when he makes an ultimatum or a threat, because this, unlike his predecessors is a president who follows up. If he says that there's 60 days for negotiations, you better have results by 60 days, otherwise there are consequences. And if he says he's not going to allow the Iranian regime to develop nuclear weapons, he isn't. Right. And he's going to take military action, even if it's not going to be popular and even if it's going to be risky. He has the courage and the leadership and the commitment to do so. So when he makes that kind of a threat, if I were an Iranian planner, I would sit up straight and take action. Now, I don't think they have it in them. I don't think they have the wisdom to do what's good for them. If they had, they would have climbed down this tree a long time ago. They would have handed over their enriched material. They would have said, okay, we're done with nuclear weapons. We're done with firing ballistic missiles at the region. Just, leave us be. And then probably the U.S. would have backed down. But they don't have that in them because, as I said before, they are fanatics. They believe that they are enacting a religious plan, a divine plan, and therefore they have, that limited capacity to make cognitive decisions. Now, about the Hormuz Strait. Yes, the regular Iranian Navy and the IRGC, two separate entities. The IRGC Navy being the more dangerous and advanced component, both have been significantly degraded. But when we talk about closing a strait for traffic, it's much more the perception of threat than the actual threat. So the Iranian regime can hit tankers. Still, they can do that. They can hit tankers with a multitude of low-signature weapons.
Mines?
Mines, not so much, but specifically drones, shore-to-sea missiles, and other ballistic missiles. And unmanned boats, explosive boats, suicide boats, okay? So these are the four main tools that we know that the Iranian regime has. We know that they have built this infrastructure in the coastal area, southern central Iran, around the area of Hormuz, where the geography is permissible, and we know that they have prepared. They have prepared launch positions from bedrock positions on the coast, very difficult to access from other areas, but it's just a hatch that opens and out flies a missile, right? So what the Iranians have done is to prepare for this. The U.S. Navy, U.S. military, has indeed prepared for this very scenario as well. Now, the issue here is that the Iranians just have to fire successfully and hit a few tankers in order for global shipping, the insurers, the unions, the owners, everybody to say, okay, this is too high of a risk. Yeah, it's not worth it. And let's pause. Let's stay in a safe location until things get open. Now, when President Trump makes that kind of a threat, and that connects back to what we spoke about in the beginning, there are still so many targets in Iran that the U.S. and Israel have decided not to strike. Energy being the most important one. Hajj Island, where the Iranian regime exports all of their oil from.
90%, right?
Yeah, like almost all of it. Gas and oil is exported there. It's already been struck and all of the military infrastructure has been taken out, so it's there for the taking. And the Iranians, by firing at energy infrastructure in the region, Saudi, Qatar, Bahrain, Oman, and other places, aiming for Haifa as well, they really, they basically put Hajj on the table. That's now what they're betting. So that can be taken out. And of course, all of the electric manufacturing sites in Iran. Tehran is a city of more than 10 million people. There's a few electric facilities around it, utilities that produce electricity. They can be struck very easily, and Iran can be left without electricity for all the population and for most of the military. Now, for obvious reasons of thinking about the day after, thinking about the well-being of Iranian civilians, the U.S. and Israel have so far not struck these targets, but Iran is escalating the situation, and therefore the U.S. can retaliate. Now, militarily speaking, regarding Hormuz, it would take some boots on the ground, special forces and forces capable of doing amphibious landing to take select locations. It would take an aerial campaign, and it'll take intel and naval assets in order to open up that area and make it safe enough for travel. I've spoken with naval military experts. We have one at FDD.
Yeah.
His name is Admiral Montgomery. According to his assessment, it's an operation that would take a few weeks, 2 maybe to 4 weeks. Yes, 2 to 4 weeks, up until you have sufficiently low levels of threat that will allow civilian traffic at a threat level that is okay for insurers and economic interest to continue. Now, yeah, that will have an effect.
It's a long time for the economy.
Yeah, it's a long time when you look at it short time perspective. Right. It's a very short time when you think of what the future will be. If the Iranian regime is undone, how that changes the dynamic in the region, and B, from a negative point of view, if the war ends and Iran learns that they can flex that muscle and get away with it. And you can already see when they issue statements now about the terms under which they will agree to a ceasefire, it's that they basically want to own and govern the Hormuz Strait and affect a totally new regime on all global maritime shipping there, which is, of course, ridiculous. They're not in a position to be dictating any terms. But that's the thing with theocracies and with tyrannies. They don't do what's in their best interest. They don't do what's in the best interest of their people. They do what they can and what they want in order to stay in power.
Okay, so now I'm going to the third part of it, which is the media/propaganda campaign, which you really have been fighting, not specifically with Iran, but all Iran's proxies and Iran over the past, since October 7th, but even before. And I think what's interesting about this is that if any one of us, and I assume a lot of the viewers and listeners have X accounts, you just scroll, you see accounts with literally millions of views, videos, AI of Tel Aviv, where we are right now. Sounds quiet outside, burning. Bibi has been killed like 20 times already and keeps on coming back to life. He had a press conference a few days ago. A reporter I saw put up a picture of himself at the press conference. You had literally thousands of comments saying that the reporter is a propagandist and that he's lying and this is an AI picture himself.
Yeah.
You had, when Netanyahu went to the coffee shop and took the video, you had people saying that's AI. And Joe Rogan, for example, yesterday, on his episode with Mark Norman, he's explaining, Joe Rogan, the most popular podcast in the world, that Bibi is actually dead. His brother is dead, Joe Rogan says. The video of the coffee shop is AI Joe Rogan, like not some random guy.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me also, and I'll get your take on both of these things, is that I've heard from people in Israel who are in intelligence and stuff saying that a lot of people in the upper echelons of the Iranian government believe this. So you have people in Iran who are some of the decision makers believing the propaganda that their guys are making.
Yeah.
And they believe they're winning because of that.
Oh, yeah. I agree with that. So, when we look back at the decision making here by Iran, you can see that they have made the cardinal sin of believing their own propaganda, believing their own might, believing that the balance of power between them and us is in their favor, and believing in the fake news that are, concocted out of some basement in Tehran, and thinking that, they actually are achieving it. I remember the first days of Operation...
in June.
Of the operation in June.
12-day war.
Yeah, Roaring Lion. No, that was Amkelavir.
Now we're Roaring Lion.
The operation in June.
Yes.
The other lion. I remember, reports coming out that the Iranian air defenses had downed an F-35 with a female Israeli pilot who also happened to be blonde and extremely beautiful. And there were pictures, which many of them are, but that's beside the point. And there were pictures in Iran of an Israeli pilot apprehended by a bunch of Iranian men after her plane had been shot down. And people believe that. And I was asked hundreds of times within a very short time frame.
On news shows and things?
Oh, yeah. Serious places. Like, do you have confirmation? Or are your planes intact? Has an F-35 been shot down? And, it took time and official statements by Israel to actually discredit that. And what's really amazing is that people I think they want to be
Yes.
duped. They want to be tricked. They want to believe in the sensational. Give an example from yesterday. Unfortunate night yesterday
In Arad.
in Arad and Dimona. We had mass casualty event in Arad where about 80 people were wounded, 15 of them seriously, by a direct impact of a ballistic missile that the Iranians fired at that city. Now, it slipped through the defenses. Nothing fancy about the missile. It's the same type of missile that Israeli air defenses has effectively intercepted hundreds of times in the last 20 or so days. This one slipped through. The Israeli Air Force hasn't yet said how it happened, but it slipped through. The bottom line is that what the Iranians tried to do, they saw that one missile got through, and they immediately gave an official on-record statement by the spokesperson of the Revolutionary Guard saying, we are now going into a new stage of operations and we have unleashed surprises, and this is a new type of missile. All bullshit. It's just, cheap snake oil from, people who peddle in lies. But this is what the Iranian regime is left to do. They don't have real battlefield success. They are not capable of defending their own skies. They are not capable of targeting strategic infrastructure in Israel. They haven't hit one single place of importance, not Haifa, not anything sensitive in Tel Aviv. They aimed for Dimona but didn't hit. And they don't have anything in terms of achievement except for killing and wounding Israeli civilians. So what's left is all this sensational nonsense. And what really is astonishing, and I think, evolution here, technological tools are much faster than our cognitive ability to filter and to be able to distinguish between what's plausible and what's sensational, but our primate brain really goes for the sensational again and again. It's very regrettable that a person like Joe Rogan falls for that kind of nonsense, and there's so much ample evidence that just shows the Iranian regime is full of it. They're desperate. They've been lying for years to their own people, and they've been portraying this image of strength and the ability to project strength around the world. What they are is a paper tiger that is being defeated and dismantled on the battlefield, and what they're left doing is lying. It's regrettable that people still believe them.
But I'll tell you what is interesting, and this is the more media angle of this, is that the people who are amplifying it, they're not just Iranian agents, let's say. They are people that they're the usual suspects, so to speak. So, for example, yesterday I saw Glenn Greenwald was very happy about what's happening in Dimona. He was sure that Iran, it sounded like he was sure Iran was taking out the nuclear Israeli sites. And he was so excited about it. He was
which sites?
Yeah, exactly. No, and him, and then you had all these, Jake Shields, this anti-Semite on X who has millions of followers. He was so excited about all these things. Doug McGregor, who's also another general that was a lot on Tucker Carlson's show, former American general. He keeps on.
You know more anti-Semites than I do.
I know all these. I don't know them personally, but they have influence because they literally have millions of people that listen to them, believe them.
Yeah. And
not only, I think the other part is that they want to believe them because they hate Israel so much, and because Israel is winning.
Yeah.
They latch onto any information that shows that Israel might be losing somewhere, and they want to believe it.
Yeah,
they can't. And so you see, someone writes, Doug McGregor writes, Tel Aviv is burning, and this is the regime, Israeli regime is collapsing, and he gets 70,000 likes in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
and it's
most of whom we could question the authenticity of those.
But
likes.
A lot of them are.
How many of them are bought? How many of them are bots paid for, artificially generated? I mean, you look at Nick Fuentes' numbers; they're ridiculous. It completely doesn't make sense. And when you do a quick analysis of algorithm and how fast they get likes and views, it is not organic, and it isn't real. And yet people see the number below the video and they say, oh, wow, so many people have watched it.
Yeah.
then I have to listen and yeah. But that is part of modern warfare. It is regrettable. Some part of me, however, a small part of me enjoys it. I enjoy seeing people who otherwise are serious people, intelligent people, really say stupid and silly things, and I love it that they do it on camera. I was just on a Piers Morgan debate, and there were two professors, pompous, full of self-esteem and self-importance, given the respect of important and allegedly rational people, spewing out nonsense, just talking nonsense. And my first response was, I'm so happy this is on video, because we will revisit these videos. We will see how your long-winded, fancy-worded assessments, how they will hold up to reality. And I think many of them are going to be forced to at least eat their hats. But it is, for people who don't know better, let's say for an average consumer who has his phone and
And he's
scrolls
not
through,
ideologically invested.
right, he's not invested. He or she doesn't know, doesn't have the military background, and people get inundated with information from sources that they deem credible.
Right.
A lot of people, as you say, would think that Joe Rogan is a credible source of information,
even
because on
Tucker.
other things, and on other things he may be. But he's obviously way out of his, lane, way out of his comfort zone, into uncharted territory from his intellectual capacity. And that is regrettable.
And you know what's so annoying? I'll just say that they say it, a lot of these people, with such confidence.
Yeah.
They don't even, like, I'm talking with you here. We both, at least for me, I make mistakes. We say things we're not sure. They're 100% sure that this is AI, that Bibi is at the conference. It's like, can't you be a little bit, maybe there's a chance you're wrong? No, they're sure of it. And he's proving it. He did a zoom in on Bibi's hand to explain at the show, this must be AI. And you're like,
I think Bibi even did a reference to it. He showed his hands. And,
so that proved.
That
was
proved.
Another, like, okay. So the next question is, if they're so ridiculous, and if it's almost impossible to convince the people who are true believers of these types of characters, does it really matter what Israel's response to that is? Meaning, why did Netanyahu have to put out the video to show that he's alive if the people who follow these people will believe he's dead even if he puts out the video that shows he's alive?
You have to. I mean,
why?
You have to, because truth is important. And it is important to make your case and to defend truth as you understand it, and to prevent your enemy from turning fakes into perceived reality, consumed and understood by lots of people, and most importantly by decision makers. Mm-hmm. So I have no issue with Iranian decision makers believing their own propaganda. On the contrary, that's great. Keep eating your own nonsense, and that'll be better for us, because it's a self-defeating circle. But with other people who are important, Europeans, Americans, etc., China and Japan and many other countries, we need them to have a better understanding of the situation in terms of where this is going and who's winning. And therefore it is important. Now, you cannot debunk every fake. Every second, thousands of fakes are generated and spawned around the world. So you cannot do that. What you can do is address the most important things. And what you need to do as a communicator is try to be ahead of the curve. Try to be the one who frames an event and is the first one who drives the news. I mean, nobody does it better than President Trump. You'll see him always move the frame, and then move it again, and keep people chasing him and chasing how he is framing events. Even when you see international media piling up, talking and building pressure on oil prices and Hormuz and domestic support for him, he's able to dismantle that very effectively, A, by having truth on his side, B, by dominating the information space and dictating what the topic of the day is, and I think he's
Yeah.
masterful in that
Well,
sense.
he has tons of years of TV experience and
Yeah, but I think
branding.
also a very, very unique understanding of mass media and human and psychology, and a willingness and a capacity to engage,
Right.
engage with journalists, to be open, to be relatively transparent. I can only regret that that isn't the norm here in
Yes.
Israel. We do not have people with responsibility and authority answering questions by the media, and I think that is a terrible norm. Netanyahu is a person who hardly answers questions. Once in a few months, he will answer questions.
Even during a war.
Yeah, even during a war, and that is not good.
Yeah.
That isn't good. And by the way, when you speak about controlling or being able to confront fakes better, the best disinfector is sunlight,
Yes.
the light of truth. So if you don't have to hide anything, then you're out there, out in public, you speak, you answer questions. That's the best way of debunking fakes.
I agree. So you do a lot of, you mentioned Piers Morgan, you probably go on other shows where you're sort of debating or talking, showing the side of, I would say, truth, and the other side is being shown as well, whether it's direct debates or sort of panels, whatever you want to call them. I think that, tell me if you agree with me, the people who are against this war, at least in the US, are two types of people. The number one is people who have legitimate concerns about America. You know, they were burnt in Iraq, Afghanistan. They're worried about all these deep, long regime change wars. Totally legitimate. And then there's the other types of people that literally take the Iranian side. And so you have these conflating two types of people. One is legitimate and we can have debates and discussions.
Yeah.
The other ones is literally they're saying Iran is the good guys here.
Yeah, I mean, those numbers, they are small numbers.
But
they
they're
are
all
extreme.
on TV.
Yeah, they are extreme. They're very extreme. And I would, I think that in numbers and influence, I think they are minimal. I can totally understand Americans, especially parents to soldiers, but ordinary Americans who say, well, what's this for? And here, in communications wise, I think this wasn't communicated clearly enough to the American people exactly why the US is deciding to take action. I think that could have been done better and could have been delivered to the Iranian people as the operation started by American leadership in plain English. This is what we're doing. This is Iran, the threat that it poses now. This is what we understand that the threat that Iran will pose in a short matter of time: intercontinental ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons. We're doing this now to make sure that Iran won't be able to get there, so that we in continental US won't have to deal with the threats that are just around the corner. And we understand that the Iranian regime aspires to get there. So now is an opportunity. It's low price. The price is low because the regime is weak, and the yield and the potential gain from a security perspective is enormous. If we strike now, we will dismantle a future threat. That is something that I think the American leadership should have told the American people, and I think that would have helped a lot of Main Street Americans say, okay, I get it. That's a pretty good thing. I don't like wars. I don't want instability, but I understand that if there's a future threat that can be dealt with now, and we do it at relatively low risk, you know what? That's okay. I won't resist to that too much, and I think that could have disassembled a lot of the pressure. There are, however, a lot of people, many of them in positions of power and influence in media, who really are against anything that President Trump will do. And if it's coupled with Israel, even more so. And then they will find whatever intellectual excuse to be against it. So they'll do the continued media campaigns that we see. I mean, if you read the New York Times and CNN, if you watch that and read that, you could be totally mistaken and thinking that Iran is winning the war.
Right.
And it's just a matter of time, and the world economy is going to implode, and Iran is going to emerge victorious, and the US is going to lose, and nobody supports this war. And then when you look at the actual polls and numbers, well, a lot of people support the war. A lot of people support the way that it's being conducted by the US and Israel. And Iran is not winning. Iran is losing every day. But then there are people with, serious bias against the president and against his policies that have a lot of influence and influence mass media. I'd say also that there's this, people refer to Trump derangement syndrome. There's Israel derangement syndrome. Yes. Many times there's a lot of overlap between the people. You can see the same level of irrational hatred that is common to both of them. Not saying that Israel or Trump are perfect. Definitely not.
No.
There's room for criticism, and any person in power, American president, Israeli prime minister, should be up for scrutiny, and they are, and that's totally fine. Anybody with power should be held accountable. But I think with our two countries, the U.S. president and Israel, we are singled out for criticism and contempt like no other country. And I think looking at the current situation, there are people who bend over backwards to try to legalize and justify what the Iranian regime is doing. It's the same people many times who claim to be champions of human rights and who cared deeply and shed rivers of crocodile tears over the humanitarian situation in Gaza, yet didn't find it within themselves to speak about what the atrocities that the regime was doing against the Iranian people. Mass murder, systemic, industrial mass murder of Iranian protesters on Iranian streets, and that went virtually unnoticed by most of the same people who claim to care about human rights. Most of the same feminists with pink hair in the US who claim to care about women's rights when it's about Palestinians, totally silent when it comes to Iranian women. Same people who despise everything that Israel does in terms of protecting Israeli civilians against rioters or against terrorists, they were very quiet when it came to the Iranian regime doing everything that they did. So there's a lot of hypocrisy. There's a lot of biased positioning, a lot of media personalities who have very strong platforms constantly conflate between opinion and news and really peddle in opinion masquerading as news. And I face that so many times when you have usually someone with a fancy, lovely British accent, which gives additional credibility, will portray a situation as if it is the truth when it is just his subjective opinion, but he's on CNN or on BBC, and then therefore that is how people understand the reality.
Can I ask you, after October 7th especially, I read that you were sometimes 30, 40 times a day on TV.
Yeah.
So in a matter of 24 hours, you're doing 30, sometimes 40.
For a night. Yeah, I would do the night shift, and I do between 30 and 40 interviews.
Yeah. So can you give us maybe a few, so how would you, I guess, discern if the media outlet or the journalist at the media outlet is being critical but fair, he's just looking to do his job, or he's being anti-Israel in the most crude and not objective sense? So how would you know going into an interview? Would you, number one, or maybe as the interview is going on, you realize that's not fair, the way, like, this guy just hates Israel, or that's a totally legitimate question and let's try to have this debate?
Yeah. So most of what I did then was, top tier networks,
right.
CNN, BBC, Fox, MSNBC, PBS, Sky, that level of networks. And usually the rule of thumb for me was, I would glance down at the screen. Okay, who do I have next? Okay. I'll give an easy example, BBC Ireland, okay?
Oy vey.
BBC Ireland, going into an interview there, I know that I will face anti-Semitic slurs, sometimes thinly veiled, sometimes not, and that the questions will be biased, aggressive, loaded and unfair. That's going into the interview. And I have to say that I wasn't, surprised by any of the questions. I was surprised by the stupidity and the lack of sophistication.
Can you give an example?
I'll give an example from BBC,
Okay.
a pretty famous one. This is after the Operation Arnon, where Israel was able to heroically rescue our 4 hostages from Khan Yunis. Arnon was the name of one of the officers from Yamam, the special counterterrorism unit, who unfortunately was killed in action, leading his troops very bravely there. And it was a brilliant operation. Special forces acted on intel, infiltrated into Khan Yunis, disguised as local Arabs, as Gazans, got to the location, killed the terrorist, got our hostages out, Noah Gamani and 3 men, and whisked them home to safety in Israel. Brilliant operation, the kind of stuff that movies are made of, and really credit to the brave men who did it. And the second question I got when I commented on it on BBC by a relatively young person who sat in front of the camera was, well, why didn't you give early warning to the Palestinians so you could prevent collateral damage and people being killed there? To which I responded, well, if we would have given early warning, then that would have defeated the purpose, right? The terrorist would have either killed the hostages. She asked it totally seriously. Yeah. And it made sense because for her, the mindset is one of always blame Israel. Right. If something happens, if there's combat, if people are killed, never think about, okay, what's the context? What has the enemy of Israel done, in this case Hamas? Why is Israel doing what it's doing? And who bears ultimate responsibility? The questions for these answers from a perspective of such kind of a person will always be blame Israel. And therefore, it made sense to her to ask a totally silly question and to do it with a straight face. And, it's just more of the same. That's an extreme example. But by and large, I've had lots of straight and professional questions being asked by various journalists around the world. I think that when I'm in uniform, when I spoke on behalf of the IDF, I should be fielding tough questions, and as a military fighting, we're supposed to be able to answer them, and that's totally fine. My issue is that it's usually one-sided. That there's this bar for Israel. This is the level of scrutiny. This is the level of transparency required, and this is where we hold Israel accountable for. And then somewhere here below the table, my hand is, visible below the table. That's what we expect of Israel's enemies.
I wanted to ask a follow-up. So since you've left your reserve duty in the IDF as the spokesperson, you've been on a number of high-profile, like I said, I don't know if you call them debates or panels, discussions, especially on Piers' show. Mm-hmm. So I guess a twofold. Number one, you have all these characters that have since October 7th become famous in bashing Israel. For example, Dave Smith, I don't think most people have no idea who he was until he started bashing Israel. And then he became a celebrity. The only reason why he's a celebrity is because he's against Israel. That's his claim to fame. I never heard a joke he said. He keeps on calling himself a comedian. Did you ever hear a funny thing? I never heard anything.
No.
So he's on all these shows with you. He gets his snippets in. It seems to me, he's going on talking points of like a script that he has for himself.
Many of them do.
Yeah. So how do this whole phenomena of, I haven't seen any other country in the world where people have become famous for being against the country.
Yeah.
In media.
I jokingly said to a friend that if I continue coming on Pierce's show, I will meet all the anti-Semites of importance in the world.
Yes, exactly.
Because that's where they gravitate to, and Pierce hosts them. He gives them his platform.
Have you told him that, this is ridiculous?
I've said so on air. I've said so. Actually, it was with Dave Smith. I insinuated that there was anti-Semitism in the panel, and then both of them got kind of...
he literally has Nick Fuentes and all
these
people.
And he was Pierce was adamant, am I an anti-Semite? And I said, no, I don't think you are, but you definitely are supporting anti-Semitism by platforming the worst and the most vile anti-Semites out there, and you profit from it. That is what Pierce does.
It's true.
Now, that is unfortunate. And, it's a constant dilemma for me whether or not I should be there or not, whether other Israelis and pro-Israeli people should be there. It's a dilemma that I still haven't, terminally decided yet. So far, I'll be there because I think it has value. And I think it's an opportunity for me to speak up on behalf of Israel, the Jewish people, the IDF, and confront some of the people who go there. But it's a dilemma. It's not something that I think it's that I've decided finally on yet. In terms of the amount of self-proclaimed experts and people who, as you said before, speak with great confidence and with great passion about another hypocrite, Anna Kasparian.
Yes,
We were on the same panel, and she, in her usual very crass style, was screaming and shouting insults at everybody who wasn't to her liking, and she was yapping on about American servicemen and soldiers and how much that she cares about American servicemen and casualties. And I asked her, when was the last time that you ever went to an American military cemetery and paid your respect? When did you ever volunteer to go visit bereaved families? Have you ever put the flag of MIAs, KIAs, or a yellow ribbon on your house or car? Have you done anything? Have you donated money to PTSD treatment for veterans? Have you visited your local VA? Have you done anything to give you the credit to wave that flag of I care about American soldiers? She doesn't care even an iota about the well-being of American servicemen. It's all just a talking point, a cheap talking point from her. But the sad thing is that so many people get away with it. They get away with being hypocrites. They get away with...
Because it's Israel.
Yeah.
If it was any other country, they would never get away with it.
It's the ultimate unifying power of hatred in the world. It's really magical when you see how many people with different phobias and different issues, psychological issues in their life, they can disagree on so many things, but they are able to converge and really agree and find common ground. Yeah, find common ground in their hatred of the Jews and the Jewish state. Amazing. Yeah. What a unifying power Israel has in unifying crazy, dark, empty souls in their hatred of Israel. It's sad. But I mean, is it news? No, it isn't news. And we know as Jews, this is something that we've been dealing with for thousands of years. It has shifted its shape, and it's more loud, and it gets closer to us because we get it directly to our feet. So you could think that there's more of it, and it's more powerful. On the positive side, you look at Israel, how Israel is doing. I think we're doing pretty well.
But on the scale of it, I am. To me, it's scary because like I told you before, I grew up in America. I don't remember it being like this. This is crazy, but
because it's so up close and personal.
No,
now.
but also the numbers of it are.
Yeah.
And I guess the second thing is that what I want to ask you about that is we had Jonathan Greenblatt here. He was speaking about both right and left wing anti-Semitism in America.
Yeah.
And you actually, in these panels, meet both sides. So Anna Kasparian's on the left. She hates the righties. But then the righties that hate Israel now love Anna Kasparian because Cenk Uygur, her boss, was on Tucker's show. So you had the two
It's
sides.
the horseshoe
exactly.
theory.
They met.
Yeah.
The horseshoe. Literally, both sides met, and they're meeting all the time.
Yeah.
Israel is what brings them together, the hatred of Jews and the Jewish state. So there's all this debate, who is worse, the left or the right, in terms of who should we be more scared of? I say, and Greenblatt agreed with me, I think, and he said it, is that the left is scarier for two reasons. Number one is because it's institutional by them. Literally, you have candidates that are in Congress that are Israel haters and sometimes Jewish haters. You have the mayor of New York City, my old hometown, whose wife is liking posts of celebrating the deaths of our people here. Yeah. And you have also, if you look at the polls of Democrat primary voters, any candidate who is, for example, supported by AIPAC, it's almost impossible for them to now at least openly celebrate it. If you're openly pro-Israel, it's very difficult to win on the national level. And the Republicans on the right, you have a little more pushback, at least as of now. Hopefully it'll continue. So how do you look at this dynamic? Do you agree? Do you not agree? How do you see that?
In essence, I agree. I think in addition to that, I want to share light on a campaign that is being waged to undermine the support of Christian evangelicals to Israel. And that's a very important one. I think a lot of people are still not aware. It's happening by the likes of Fuentes, Carlson, Bannon, and a few others. They are the main ideological engines of this. And they've correctly understood, and all three of them, they are intelligent. Their lack of morals, and they're despicable, but they are intelligent. And I think they have understood and defined that Christian Zionists, supporters of Israel, Protestants, are a bedrock of American support to Israel.
Yes.
And they are trying to undermine that. So within the right, we're seeing efforts by different offshoots, Christian offshoots, that are basically they're adapting and using different Christian theology in order to undermine evangelical support of Israel, in order to weaken Israel and to detach between the U.S. and Israel.
On that point, Tucker said he hates Christian Zionists more than
anything.
More than us.
And that's why I mentioned him, because he is definitely an important part of it. So is Nick Fuentes, and Bannon is one of the chief strategists behind it.
He said he's a Christian Zionist a few years back, by the way.
Allegedly.
He changes his... But Bannon is like, I think, the most... The proof of the grift here, because literally he was like the best friend of Jeffrey Epstein.
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes before these files have been released by the Justice Department, he was banging on about, we will never let the Epstein stuff go away. We will continue fighting this and the secret cabal and all these other things. Turns out he is the one most mentioned of any other human on planet Earth, emailing Jeffrey Epstein. He's helping him, make his image better. Yeah. He's saying he's going to do a documentary about him to show him in a good light. He literally said at one point that Jeffrey Epstein was like a god to him. Mm-hmm. One of the emails, he's using Epstein's private plane to go from Europe back to America, and he's like one of the biggest guys, like you said, promoting this whole.
Yeah, so that is something that I think people that. I don't know how many evangelicals listen to your show, but that is definitely something that is important, because that's a long-term strategic threat. Everything else, I agree with, the left and right, the crazies on both sides. I, too, am more concerned about leftists, because right-wing crazies, I think we Jews historically have a better sense for it. We've gone through pogroms, we've gone through Nazi Germany, we've gone through all those types of right-wing violence, and we have a better cultural awareness to identify, okay, that guy's a poorly disguised neo-Nazi. I can see that. I can feel it in my bones when I see one like it, and I know how to take measures against it. In progressive or left-leaning, it is different, but it is equally, I think, venomous and dangerous. And I think from a long-term perspective, very, very important. Yeah. But that being said, what's happening now with evangelicals is super important. The book by Walter Russell Mead, the Ark of the Covenant, basically tells the story of why is there such a strong, solid, bipartisan connection between the U.S. and Israel. Right. What really is behind it? And it's a very long book with lots of information in it. But when you filter it down, Christian evangelical beliefs in the fact that the Jewish people are the chosen people, and Christians who do good to the Jews, they will get blessed. They will get blessed in return. That's foundational. And what the effort now that is happening is an effort to undermine that very foundation. Yes. That's strategic long-term. That's important for people to be aware of and, of course, to confront.
So, lastly, before I let you go, I want to ask you about Jews in America because you speak a lot to Jewish organizations. You go and talk to, congregations and student bodies and all these things. And people want to hear you and talk to you. So, when you talk to the younger generation of Jews, college campuses, universities, Hillels, whatever, what is your sense about young Jews in the US? Are they scared to be Jewish? Are they really drifting away from Israel? What do you think is like, how should we in Israel think about the Jews in the diaspora, the younger ones? The older ones, we know more or less where they are. My father's generation more or less supports Israel. Norman Finkelstein, that you talk to a lot, is an outlier. But how would you describe your feelings about younger Jews?
First and foremost, I will say that I am immensely indebted in gratitude to how Jewish communities in the US, in Canada, in South Africa, in Australia, in France, in many other places in the UK, how they responded to October 7, when Israel really was caught by surprise, humiliated, weak, and in disarray, how Jews around the world showed their support in action, in prayers, in thoughts, in collecting money, in petitioning, in sending equipment, in doing everything needed in order to help the Jewish state get back on its feet. And that is something that I think is so positive and so important. And every opportunity I have, when I meet with communities, when I meet with people, the first thing I say is thank you. And I think that's so important because it's a silver lining of October 7 that a lot of Jews understood that, oh, this is real, and that the whole fake dream of the globally assimilated Jew who can feel at home surrounded by non-Jews and can be accepted. That's something nice to aspire to, but in many cases it isn't. A lot of people who lived like that and then had their whole world come down, their entire social circles, and everything just changed overnight. And they were brave enough to course correct, and we've seen such outpouring of support since then. Having said that, we have a serious problem with the children of those people, many of whom I meet and get to interact with. And this isn't new. I did a speaking tour in 2014, Pesach 2014. Before I was spokesperson, I was a major at the time, and I had the opportunity to go speaking at the US Ivy League universities. I think it was 11 universities, spoke with a lot of people in uniform, not as a spokesperson, just as an Israeli officer interacting with people there. And I remember coming back feeling very, very distressed by the level of fear and intimidation of the Jewish kids on campuses. This was 2014, and that was the first thing that I wrote in my report. We have a problem because Jewish kids are afraid to be Jews, and they are detached from Israel. They're detached from their religious background, from their cultural background. I see a huge deficit in pride and a sense of belonging and cohesion. I see Jewish kids fearing and really wanting to assimilate up until the level of really undermining their own identity as Jews and as supporters of Israel. That was 2014. And I think today what we're seeing is an enhanced version of this. I go to lots of events and I speak at many forums, and I always prioritize speaking with the young people. Whenever parents bring their kids there, teenagers or young adults, they are the people that I will go and speak with first. They're the ones who I'll address in the crowd because they are the most important. And yes, we do have a problem there. And I think it comes back to education at home. It comes back to how ridiculously expensive it is in the US to send your kids to a decent Jewish school. And I can totally understand, American families, you have 3-4 kids and they charge you many times more than your mortgage just to send your kid to kindergarten, not even to be speaking of school. That's a dilemma. And in regular public schools, or in Christian schools or public schools, they will get inundated many times with anti-Israeli sentiment.
Yes.
They will lose connection with their cultural, religious heritage. And then you find kids at the age of 18 that they go to college, and there it's a battlefield, and they are not equipped. They don't have the tools, the knowledge, or the emotional connection to fight. And they don't even know what they're fighting for. Right. They know that the other guys and girls, they're pointing at them and they're singling them out, but they haven't, it's like an athlete who hasn't trained for the competition he's in. He doesn't have the muscles, he doesn't have the stamina, and he's being asked to participate in a race or a fight that he isn't skilled to do.
And can I also say that I think that the universities themselves, as we've seen right in front of our faces, they're corrupt in a way that...
Oh, yeah,
so
totally.
Many of them what I think we should tell a lot of parents, and I say, you don't have to go to the best school, the best. Harvard has been proven to not be the best.
Yeah.
And Columbia, next to where I used to live, and NYU and all these places. You have southern universities that are pretty good.
Oh, yeah, but that's happening already, right?
I know. You have a lot of people for Columbia that moved to Yeshiva University and all these things.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of parents, especially Jewish parents, they want the best.
Yeah.
But these best are not the best.
No, they're not.
So you should,
not.
And you shouldn't give them money also.
In many cases, they're poison.
We interviewed Bill Ackman. He took the money away from Harvard that he was giving them. And I think that all rich people, and a lot of them are Jews.
Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem. Kenai Nahara. But one of the things that that Robert Kraft also, I think, took from one of the other places, the point is that people were giving blindly.
Yeah.
Because they thought it was the same university that when they grew up, they're not the same. The universities have changed. The faculties have changed. We talk a lot about Qatar and the influence they've had. The universities it's been granted that these rich Jews will give money, and no one has checked where the money's going and what's happening. And you don't have to give money to these places. So that's one of the things that I think should be said.
I agree with that. And you already, parents have made those decisions basically in 2024, 23, 24. They responded to that, and you saw a shift of a lot of Jewish talent going elsewhere. I would hope that more would happen, and I'm happy to see the U.S. government suing Harvard, lawsuit for institutional bias against Jews, for failing to protect. Jewish Americans. Same thing if it was Chinese, Chinese Americans, Chinese Japanese, Muslims, whatever. They failed. Harvard, and I still remember the press conference that they did. It was just, textbook how not to do a press conference and how not to.
You mean the congressional hearing?
The congressional
with
hearing.
Elise Stefanik.
Yeah, that was brutal. Very interesting to see. But they failed. Yeah. Failed morally. They failed, to protect their students and really expose the institutional problems that they have. And I've been canceled at so many U.S. universities. My agent reaches out. We try to set up a speaking session, and I have been canceled so many times.
What do you mean that they say you can't come because you're
can't
Israeli?
Come? Yeah, we don't want to hear what you want to say. There'll be Jewish students who will try, the Hillels and the Chabads and etc. They'll want to invite me, but they'll prohibit them from having me on campus. And they will put up all kinds of hindrances, and the local chapters of the Justice for whatever, the other foreign-funded Islamist organizations on campus, which there are many. They are very active, very aggressive, very vocal, and they have a lot of support from faculty and staff. Yes. And that's why I understand that Jewish American kids, they face a lot. Yeah. They face a lot. It's a challenging environment, and many times they are not equipped for the fight. Where that brings us home to is how important it is that the young parents who may be listening to us now to educate their kids, to educate them with a love for their heritage, with a love and respect for their religion, with a love for Israel. Try to put politics aside, and yes, it's a divisive world, and yes, Israeli politicians are far from perfect, and they are annoying.
And in Israel, we don't like them either, so it's fine.
No, that's totally fine. But there's a difference between that and our homeland,
Exactly.
this miracle that is the modern state of Israel, which should be cherished, which should be supported. And I think it starts with education at home. But I have to commend, organizations like Stand With Us, who are fighting on campus with local initiatives. Just a few weeks ago, I was in Dallas. There's an organization that it's called Mothers Against Anti-Semitism on Campus. They saw that they have a problem in Texas, Dallas. And they got together, pooled resources, and they are now petitioning and working to create a better, safer environment for their kids on campus and fighting discrimination and bias and hatred against Jews. Brilliant. That's the level of, that's example of activism. Reaching out to local state and federal authorities, liaising with them, applying pressure, petitioning, using the media, using your financial muscles. You gave the excellent example of the brave and brilliant Ackman, and I hope many will emulate what he has done and is doing. There's a lot that can be done, and there are a lot of good examples. You look at Miami. There was one student sit down. I think it was on the 8th.
It didn't happen again.
And it never happened again. Why? Because there was swift action, because the Jewish community is large, strong, isn't afraid to use its muscle, and they are connected to Israel.
And not just the Jews. The Florida, Governor DeSantis and all these other, they support Israel out of one of the reasons is the Christian Zionist thing. So we have to say, it's Jews and our partners that we're, and by the way, even if you're not a Christian Zionist, you should support Israel against these barbarians. We should put that on this. Even if you're
you should.
Atheist, you should. You should.
It makes sense that you would.
You're right.
Yeah.
A lot of things don't make sense in our world. Jonathan Conricus, they're going to throw us out of the studio here. So it was a lot of fun. I appreciate all you've been doing since before. I was going to talk to you about your combat and Gaza and all that, but we didn't have time. Maybe another time. So thank you so much for being with us. And
thank you and
see you
shalom.
next time.